It's marathon season, and I want to help you run a faster marathon. But I don't want to talk about the same tips that everyone always talks about. Yes, run high mileage. Yes, focus on your long run. I want to talk about some unique strategies to help you run your best marathon yet. And what we're going to do in this video is pull from the world of middle distance and the world of ultra marathoning to help marathoners do more strategic workouts, to think better about their training so that when you line up on the starting line of your next marathon, you know that you are in PR shape. Now, the major reason that we are pulling ideas from the world of ultra running and the world of middle distance track running is because I think too many marathoners run too many marathons. I think marathoners would be much better served if they took some time away from the marathon and instead focused on other distances. You do different training, you work on different physical skills. Now it's all running, so you're not going to lose your fitness, but you're going to work on your weaknesses. You're going to build up your strengths. And when it comes time to then go train for your next marathon, you're going to be a better runner. You're going to have more of those physical skills. You're going to be a better athlete, and you're going to be much more capable as you go through your marathon training and as you go through your actual marathon. So I have 3 pieces of advice for you today, and I want to start with 2 from the world of ultra running. Now, ultra runners do some things that are a little bit different from marathoners because they have to run for such a long period of time. And we can learn from that and pull some of those ideas into our own marathon training for better results. One of the workouts that ultra runners do regularly that I absolutely love is the back-to-back long run. It's a pretty brutal weekend where you essentially run 2 long runs on subsequent days. Now, the key here is how you structure each of those long runs, because it's not like we just want to do a 20-mile run on Saturday and then a 20-mile run on Sunday. We want to think a little bit deeper about this. And one of the best ways to execute the back-to-back long run is to first do a slightly shorter but normal, easy long run. So let's say you're training for a marathon and you've gotten your long run up to, say, 18 or 19 miles. Next weekend, instead of running 18 or 19 miles or maybe going up to 20 for your next long run, instead, let's just run 16 or 17 miles. And the key here is maybe we go running on trails. Maybe we go running on a very hilly course. Let's somehow add in some extra challenge to this run. Even though we're not trying to run this run any faster than normal, we're not trying to do anything fancy with this long run. We're simply going to do a slightly shorter long run on some maybe more challenging terrain than usual. Now, the key here is what you do the next day. Now, the next day, you're going to be tired, just like you always are after a long run. Now, hopefully you're not as tired because you've run a little bit less than what you're used to. Now, the key here is to make your second long run even shorter. So if you're used to running 19 miles for your long run and you just ran, say, a 16-mile long run on some trails on Saturday, the next day, maybe we only run 14 miles. But the key is to include some quality running in this run. And I personally think that it's much better to do that quality running closer to the beginning of the run to help you, number 1, make sure that you're doing it with more fuel reserves. Number 2, let's make sure we're doing it when we're not absolutely tired. You know, at the very end of this back-to-back long run is when you are going to be at your most fatigued. Now, there's some different lines of thinking here on this because you're obviously going to be very fatigued at the end of a marathon. So running some goal marathon pace work at the end of this second back-to-back long run is really going to mimic what's going to happen on marathon day. But because you did a long run yesterday, because you're doing another one today, doing that work at the end of your long run might be a little bit too risky from an injury perspective. You're going to be really tired, your neuromuscular fitness is going to be shot, and it's going to be very difficult to maintain good form when you're running your marathon pace. So that's why I like to bring this quality work into the beginning of the run. So you might warm up for 2 or 3 miles, and then you might do something like 3 to 8, 10 miles at your goal marathon pace. And this helps you really build that fitness because you're still tired from the day before. You probably still have some lower glycogen stores from the long run previously, but you still get in the quality work, not quite as tired at the end of the run. So I love this strategy pulled from the world of ultra running because you're essentially getting the value of a much longer long run. You are doing 2 on separate days, but they're structured a little bit differently. They're a little bit shorter, one's a little bit more technical, and one includes some goal pace running. Now, this is admittedly a more advanced strategy. Actually, all these strategies are pretty much more advanced. So if you're a beginner runner, don't try to run back-to-back long runs, but just know that this is a strategy that exists that more advanced runners do. So as you build your fitness, as you build your capability, you can do it too. Our next strategy from the world of ultras is to do an over-distance long run. Now, an over-distance long run is what I consider anything over 20 miles. Most marathoners are probably going to cap their long run distance at 20 miles, but there is still value and benefit to doing a 22, 23, or maybe even a 24-mile long run. Now, again, this is a more advanced strategy. I don't want you doing this if you're a 4.5-hour marathoner because the time on your feet is just going to be too much. If you can't run 22 to 24 miles in, let's say, 3.5 hours or less, then I don't think you should be doing it. The risk of injury, the risk of overtraining, and the recovery that's needed for running for such a long period of time after such an effort is just too great. And, you know, there's always trade-offs. The trade-off for extra fitness, if you're taking more than 3.5 hours, is such a high extra risk of injury or overtraining, or just sacrificing your training in the days to come because you have to recover. It's too great. So let's first remember that if you can't do an over-distance long run in 3.5 hours or less, you probably shouldn't do it. But if you can, if you're someone whose easy pace is 7, 8, maybe 9 minutes a mile, then there's going to be some opportunity to go slightly longer than the 20-mile distance for marathons. And it's something that you should certainly work on gradually because there is a risk here, but this is a strategy that's being used more and more for some of the more competitive marathoners. So for the folks running 225, 220, 215, you know, those sub-elite runners who are kind of trying to break into the front of the pack, they will frequently run longer than 20 miles. And so we can take that principle and apply it to us recreational runners, except let's put the cap of 3.5 hours on it because I don't want you to get hurt, but I do want you to push yourself to gain even more from your long run. And our final tip comes from the world of middle distance track running. Now, it actually comes from looking at the careers of most pro marathoners. If you look at the careers of most pro marathoners, you'll notice that they were first track athletes. These are runners who first focused on building speed and power. These are the runners who built the skill of pacing and speed into their training first, and then they built endurance to extend it to the marathon distance. That's why they're so fast at that marathon distance. And so the lesson here is, let's not run 2 to 3 marathons year after year after year after year. Because if you get fast in the 5K, the 10K, the half marathon, if you are PRing in those shorter distances, even if it's just the mile or the 2 mile or the 3K or the 8K distance, it almost doesn't matter what the distance is. As long as you're improving, you're going to be a better runner. And better runners run better marathons. So if you have hit a plateau in the marathon distance, skip your next marathon. Let's not run another marathon. Instead, let's run a bunch of short track races, 5K races, 10K races, even up to the 10-mile or maybe half marathon distance. And what that's going to do is expose you to different types of training. You're going to be doing much faster workouts. You're probably, if you're not already, going to get in the gym and start lifting some heavier weight. Maybe you're gonna start doing some plyometrics. All these things are really great for middle distance runners. They're still great for endurance runners too, but I do think they're slightly more helpful for, say, the 5K athlete. And that's why you'll see those middle distance 5K athletes doing a lot of speed work, lifting very heavy weight, and practicing a lot of skills like hurdle mobility, skipping, or strides. And so if you're a runner who wants to get better at the marathon, we have to come at your fitness from multiple angles, right? We need to do some over distance long runs. We need to do some back-to-back long runs. But then on the flip side of that coin, when we are not deep in marathon training, we need to step away from some of that high endurance work and instead focus on some other things that are helpful for runners, like speed, strength, and power. Quickness, leg turnover, those things will carry over very well to the marathon, but only if you work at them. So if you have hit a plateau, or if you've just run one marathon, you're not sure if you're gonna run another one, maybe you will, now's a good time to focus on the shorter distances. Get fast, and then you can extend the speed that you've built over 26.2 miles. All right, there we go, runners. Those are my 3 slightly unconventional ideas for marathoners to run a faster marathon. It always comes back to training. Let's do the speedy training, or let's do the hard work of endurance training. And if we can do those in some slightly different ways, if we can focus on more ultramarathon oriented endurance sometimes, and if we're always keeping an eye on our speed and making sure that we're regularly working on it, we are going to be much better marathoners. I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, I would love for you to subscribe to this video, hit the like button so that I know you appreciate it, and we'll be in touch soon.